Tonic 2161 is the official cocktail of the Millennium Celebration. Tarina wants to codify her mutual agreement with Saru in a more official capacity. And Maul and Locke deliver Fred some self-sealing stem bolts. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk. Today we're doing a review of Star Trek Discovery. We're back with new Star Trek. Star Trek Discovery is here. Season 5, Episode 1, written by Michelle Paradise, directed by Olatunde Osunsanmi. We've got a very special guest today. Thank goodness he has returned to the show. It is Dr. Mohamed Noor. What's up, Mohamed?
Hello, always a pleasure to be on the Seventh Rule, and especially to talk Discovery. Woo!
Yeah, love the energy.
Thanks.
We've got two professors in the house all of a sudden.
We do.
I just realized this. Wow, that is impressive. No. And neither are me, by the way. It's these two guys.
I just play a professor. The real professor is Dr. Mohamed Noor.
I don't know. I've never been invited to be at Stanford, so.
That's
right. So everybody at home, just want to let you know that Cirroc Lofton represents Stanford nowadays. He's going to be working at Stanford during the spring. Dr. Mohamed Noor, of course, from Duke University. That is wall to wall, east to west, badassery, as the French say. So let's get into this one, everybody.
Yeah, they say that, huh?
In the south of France.
Badasseria. Okay.
Toulouse.
Or not Toulouse. All right. So let's talk about this episode. First of all, I was grateful for, and I expected, but was still grateful for, last season on Star Trek Discovery. I was like, good, thank you. Yeah. Because with a serialized show, well, plus it's a serialized show, so you need to kind of be up to date on everything that's going on, especially with the relationships, who's mad at whom, how things are working out. So I was very grateful for that. Cirroc, did you remember any of it? Were you grateful for it, or were you like, I can skip this?
No, I couldn't skip it. I couldn't, because they've covered so much ground on this show. You know, they've gone to the future and this and that, and you know, the mom storyline and Spock storyline, and there's so many things that have gone on in this show. I'm glad that they gave me a little refresher in the beginning, because it left me kind of, okay, I remember this, I remember that. You know, Tilly going off to the academy to get that offered that spot, and Book kind of going off and doing his thing, that separation that took place at the end of that season. That was a good reminder. So yeah, I needed it to put me back into the tune of where, because it's been a long break since we last saw a Discovery episode. I don't know how long it's been, but it feels like it's been a few months.
Years, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, 2 years.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't even remember where we were, and I'm glad that we got that refresher. But it's funny because it didn't take me long before I started like remembering the names, remembering the characters, remembering the storylines. You know, I was like, okay, there's Detmer, you know, Linus. I think it was at Linus.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, that's Linus in the back there. I saw, you know, all of the characters Tilly, for example, and Stamets, and you know, I started to remember, like it started to all come back, and then I'm like, it's Marina. I'm like, where's Jed? So it was good to get the refresher. And you know, the one thing that I do think that this show is basically an embodiment of, because I think all the shows have different things that they represent, you know. For Voyager, you know, it's a strong woman as a captain on the show, and you know, for our show, it's about family, and you know, there's a lot of different things that you walk away from on each series. And I think this series is about love stories. It's about two people, or whoever they are. It's about love between people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I would sum this show about. It is pretty much what I walk away. I feel like the love story with Saru, the love story with Burnham, love story with Stamets, the love story with Gray, all the love stories. It feels like that's what it's really about.
It's a good one.
It's a brilliant sentiment, and I completely agree. All about
Now,
relationships.
Mohamed, you're an evolutionary biologist, are you not?
I am.
Oh, what luck.
Amazing coincidence.
What luck. As fate would have it, there's some things in this episode that are kind of related to that subject matter. Is that correct, or am I imagining?
There most definitely are, and they connect back to a really interesting Next Generation episode too, which I don't think Seventh Rule has gotten to quite yet, but will not too long from now.
Just a quick pause on that. It's a season 6 episode. The episode is called The Chase. Mm-hmm. This was one of the most memorable episodes in Star Trek for me. When I saw it as a kid, and then when you look back on what you saw in Star Trek, like certain images, like I remember seeing the Benzite on, Mendon on the Enterprise. I remember that visual. I remember seeing The Chase where they all come together. And by the way, the joke is that every one of those aliens are played by Jeffrey Combs. Just so we all know.
Maybe Vaughn Armstrong too.
Right. Very good. But I always imagined that episode to be around the 3rd season. It felt sooner, but it's a 6th season episode. So Cirroc, we're going to have to wait 2 more years before we get to it. But it's a great episode with a really cool, interesting ending. But anyway, it's called The Chase. It's like season 6, episode 20 or 22. It's around there. Anyway, Mohamed, please continue.
Sure. So it's interesting that what The Chase did, and this is something that Star Trek has struggled with for a long time. The Chase tried to give an explanation for why there are so many humanoid aliens in Star Trek. Right? Basically tried to lay this out. So in the episode of The Chase, and I apologize for the spoilers on this, in the episode of The Chase, what happened is Picard, basically inherited this mission from a former mentor of his who had passed away. And what he found was there was these little bits of DNA that seemed to have some sort of code. And he found bits of the code from all these different species. And when he put all the bits together in the end, it basically created this hologram. And the hologram was this lady who actually was played by the same lady who played the female changeling in Deep Space Nine. She actually kind of almost looked like her too. But she came together and she had an explanation for what had happened. That she said that 4 billion years ago, her people went off into space and they looked for others like themselves and they didn't find any. So what they did is they seeded all those different planets in their primordial soups to try to eventually get 4 billion years later humanoid aliens, basically. And her comment at the end was her hope was that in the future, these different species would come together in fellowship and friendship, which wasn't exactly how it went down the episode, but setting that aside, they'd come together in fellowship and friendship and, discover this aspect of themselves and see how they're all connected. So this actually connects to a real biological concept, which is called panspermia. Actually, Bob Picardo had a great joke at one point in time. He said, panspermia is what happens on the cruise after there's lots of alcohol flow. That's not what panspermia is, but that's a good comment. So panspermia is the idea that life on Earth and maybe in other places was seeded with something from outer space. So one version of panspermia would be something like a primitive bacterium is dropped onto Earth, not necessarily intentionally, as in the case with this episode, but maybe, in a bit of ice from a comet that went by or in a meteor fragment or something like that, crashes on Earth. And that is essentially what spawns life. There's other versions of it. It doesn't actually have to be a true life form. It could be some missing ingredient of life. So, for example, we have found for example, water. Meteorites from outer space. Yeah, well, water is true, but it's likely that wouldn't have been enough water to do everything. But maybe say like a missing amino acid or something like that. And we know there are extraterrestrially formed amino acids. We've seen amino acids in things that come in meteors. So maybe something like that could have spawned life on Earth. I mean, the real answer is we'll never really know. I mean, shy of a time machine, we can speculate and look at probabilities, but we'll never really know whether that was what happened. But it's a reasonable hypothesis that something from outer space seeded life on Earth. And that not necessarily is true, but it certainly could be true. And if that's the case, then you could imagine that same thing may have seeded life in other places as well, maybe not just on Earth, but in other worlds. So that general concept is, valid.
Yeah. And so just to... Sorry, I just want to give just like put a bow on that. So this was kind of like an in-universe explanation for real-world situations, which is adult humans are watching a show and saying, how come every alien looks like a human, except some of them have something on their forehead, but they're all basically humans? And so this was kind of an explanation where they said, well, that's because they seeded this and they're all kind of just different variations that have evolved, but came from the same thing. Although I would think that they would evolve over that much time.
Well, see, this is the issue. You nailed it, Ryan. Actually, let's come back to that. Did you want to ask something, Cirroc? You start.
Yeah, that Ryan's question is along the same line as my question. So first answer that and see if it's answers.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So, I mean, one of the things that people, when I've talked to people about this idea, one of the things they immediately come back with is, well, does that assume the conditions are the same, all the way through? It probably does, but that is probably the lesser difficulty. The greater difficulty is this idea that basically that there's this sort of determinism that you can essentially rewind the tape of life 4 billion years. That's going a long way back, 4 billion years.
That's as long as our planet has been around for 4.5 billion years, I think, right?
I think it's a little bit longer, but not positive.
14, sorry, 14.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a little.
And there's been just like life for 4.5 or something. Anyway, please.
Something like that, yeah. But anyway, it ignores the role of random chance events. So just as one example, one of the things that led to humans basically being around here on Earth, and basically not other life forms, was if you go back 65 million years ago, there was a meteor impact, over in Mexico. And what that, along with all the volcanic activity on Earth, did was it knocked back the dinosaurs, and it allowed for more diversification of mammals, which eventually included us. Did that happen on Cardassia Prime and Romulus and all these other planets too? Exactly 65 million years ago to knock back the dinosaurs. So.
Right, and even if you seeded the same thing on Earth, again, we wouldn't have evolved the same way, because what are the chances that a meteorite would hit the Yucatan Peninsula exactly the same and kill 90% of whatever? That's a good point. I didn't think about that.
And that's just one example. There's many, many, many random chance events that happen out there. Now, a counter argument, which some people tell me who are good statisticians, they're like, yeah, but maybe they seeded like 1 billion planets instead of just the ones we see, and most of them failed. That's possible, but my comment is like, they're all here in the Alpha Quadrant. Presumably they're all rocky planets. I'm not sure there are enough good rocky planets in the right area that could actually do that. There may not be enough to do that. But who knows? I mean, setting that aside, I mean, I don't want to nitpick it too much in the sense that, but it's still nice that they incorporate something from a real biological concept, even if there's a probability aspect which doesn't quite pan out. So I still give them 2 thumbs up for effort on that one.
Totally.
Yeah, my question is more like about does the diversity in the kinds of species that we see, would that actually be a logical thing to see green people here and blue people here and people with gills and different breathing? Like, would that be a natural part of the evolution process of life being seeded in different locations?
So there would be, I mean, to some extent, I would expect there to be a lot more diversity. That essentially, I think it's likely you would get something sort of completely non-human. Now, there's a different episode of Star Trek, not the chase. There's a different episode if you go back to the original series, which actually suggested there was a super race called so in this case they call them the progenitors, but in another episode of Star Trek from the original series called the Paradise.
They're called the French.
They're called the French. No, they were. They were called the preservers. And what happened with the preservers is they would go to different planets and take populations in danger of extinction and seed them in other worlds. So what that does is that can allow for a much more recent common ancestor. So rather than going back 4 billion years to the common ancestor with Klingons and Romans and something like that, it could be like, a couple million or something. There are a couple, who knows? It could be something a lot smaller than that. What that opens up is it opens up a lot more of what you're discussing, or what you're describing, Cirroc, that, maybe on Bajor, they got this little rimpled thing on their noses. Yeah. I mean, if you basically imagine you grabbed Homo erectus, one of our ancestors, and put him someplace else, they may not look exactly the same on some other ones. Don't laugh. Come on.
Yeah. The other questions that I have about, form. So you mentioned these two, this is to explain humanoid, like 2 arms, 2 legs, right?
Yep.
But in these other locations, Klingon, Romulus, and all of these places, wouldn't you have a different gravity and atmosphere, therefore having different body types? Because if you have a different gravity, wouldn't the
Totally.
body type be altered?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, all sorts of differences would be expected. And you see this actually in the context of Star Trek Discovery in the previous season. Remember, they had species 10C, which looked nothing like humanoids, but they evolved in that case on a gas giant planet, which was, radically different from the planets that we evolved on. So, yeah, no, absolutely. Like the specific circumstances would absolutely change what you would get. 100%.
By the way, can I just say that the idea behind the 10C was freaking brilliant. So kudos to everybody that had a hand in that, I bet.
Yay, 10C.
I also want to point out that Dr. Mohamed Noor, you do something that I like very much. And just to preface it, it's very easy. It's very, very, very easy for every neckbeard and armchair critic in the world to watch a sci-fi show and say, that doesn't work because, no kidding, we're making stuff up. We're doing our best to assume, especially if something's from 50 years ago. Yeah, or 30 years ago. Of course, we're now going to look at it through the lens of, now we know that's not possible or that doesn't work, right? But what you do, which is much more difficult and much more fun, is you do the opposite, which is, let's try to figure out how it could be possible, how it does work. Way more fun, way harder, way more intelligent. That's the way people should be. So my question to you in that vein, and this might be a stretch, but you're the right guy to ask. In the chase and the theory behind it, where they did all the humanoid life, I should say. Could they theoretically, since they're super beings, put some kind of code in that seed that makes them all evolve similarly to where it really eliminates 99.9% of all the other stuff to where they really evolve very similarly over billions of years? Is that a possibility?
Conceivably. I mean, we don't have the technology obviously to do that. I think the way to do it, and this actually works with in universe, it works with an episode of Voyager. Basically, if you're monitoring the planet, let's say, for example, they didn't just go extinct after they did this thing, but they're monitoring the planet. At that point, they're just doing tweaks here and there, and they're maybe doing tweaks directly on the organisms or on the environment or something like that. At that point, absolutely. And I think there was an episode of Voyager, I don't remember which one, but talked about like some aliens like working with some of the Native Americans, way back when. Yeah, I mean, if you include a manipulation angle, basically it almost becomes a God effect. I mean, at that point, yeah, sure, you could make it so they basically come out here, and maybe some of this comes back to the question both of you all asked. Maybe that allows for some of the diversity to them too, in the sense of like they were tweaking, but they weren't absolutely tweaking everything. So that's why Klingons ended up a little bit different over here, and Romulans were a little bit different over there. I mean, one of the toughest things to explain, though, and this is probably the hardest part of everything, though, again, with the tweaks, you can fix almost anything, is the interfertility, right? That, like, humans and Vulcans can have viable offspring. Humans and Klingons can have viable offspring, stuff like that.
Right.
This suggests that we have a common ancestor 4 billion years ago. You are literally more closely related to grass than you are to
yes, I love
it. So that one's tough.
But they've touched on that with other shows like an Enterprise trying to figure out if humans what was the one where they're figuring out it was humans and Klingons, whether they could mate, I think it was, things like that. They've kind of addressed that.
Yeah, no, that's right. And they've often said like with difficulty, you say with difficulty at that point, if you're involving genetic manipulation, then yeah, like all bets are off. You can do almost anything.
Whoa, I feel smarter already.
Isn't it so fun having Mohamed on? Okay, here was my question for you, Mohamed, and this one is just because I just don't know, and I would like to know if there's an answer to this.
Sure.
In this episode, they're referencing the chase, which was really cool and really fun.
Yeah.
It's also a really good song. Isn't it a really good song by I can't remember, but it's called The Chase. It's from the 70s.
I'm sure there are many songs called The Chase.
Somebody knows it. It's like something like Mordor, more. Anyway, somebody knows. In the comments below, tell us, what's that song, The Chase, from the 70s? Really cool, techno song. No lyrics. Anyway, here's the key. They said that, Locke and Maul, they've got this blueprint or this secret or whatever, right? And they're talking about, I believe it was Kovich saying that under the wrong hands, boy, oh boy, this could be a very dangerous weapon. And my initial thought was, how?
I don't know the answer to that. That's actually something I've been struggling with since I watched the episode too. Is it conceivably possible? Sure, it's conceivably possible. What would the mechanism be?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm less clear on what that would be like. Let's say, for example, let's say life was created on Earth again right now. It's that first, bacteria-like thing.
We'd be fine.
Okay. Yeah, I know, right? It'd be there.
I'm not worried.
Okay. my guess is more that the technology can do a lot more than just create life, but they can do other things too. And maybe it's something that, yeah, it's hard to imagine exactly what it, I mean, aside from just being a weapon, but how could it by itself essentially just through its usage again wipe out, if I don't know that they weren't specific on exactly how it was dangerous. Maybe it's not.
That would be dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
But certainly in the wrong hands, that's, they're just thinking about, like with just the idea of splitting an atom in the, was just an idea at one point until somebody figured out how to actually manifest that idea. So in the wrong hands, information could become potentially dangerous. That's I would agree with that. My question was more like, this was my stupid nitpick, and this is how I'm becoming a Star Trek nerd.
All right, one of us.
Yeah, it's becoming. It's like I'm starting to ask Star Trek questions, and this was the one that I had. The fake data, right? The android in this episode, Fred. Yeah. So he was like a fake data to me, and I think data should get paid royalties every time they have somebody who's a knockoff on there. But my question is this: he got killed in this episode, and when the other captain walks up to him, he says, "The body's still warm."
Good point.
Would data still be warm? Like,
it could be.
I would love to try to answer that question. I feel like data, I mean, and these synthetics from, what is it, season 1 of Picard?
Yeah, they reference Alton Soong, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I feel like data always trying to be human, and, the Soong's trying to, like, they're going to make him feel, like skin like a human. They're going to be warm. I mean, let's look back. There's no way Tasha Yar, if he's like freezing cold, like metal,
steel,
she's like, you get the.
You said you wanted cold, hard
literally.
Steel.
Yeah. Oh my God. Oh yeah, I was thinking much more simply. Just this is like my computer's warm. It's on.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Right?
Like,
oh yeah, that's
the
what
processor inside. Just unless he's got these built-in cooling mechanisms. But yeah, so that was my question, just about what, because it's usually associated with, a biological person, like, body's still warm.
Yeah, but I did think of the first half of what Ryan said too, that they probably intentionally made it so it's similar to in temperature to a human too.
Do you think if he gets too warm, like the fan turns on? Like
that's you're like, what's that sound?
I hate it.
I'm trying to think. It's Data's fan, man.
Oh my gosh.
There's nothing I hate more in this world than when my computer's fan turns on. So annoying. Life is hard.
Got a fan. That's great. That is great. Oh, this was such a fun.
It was such a fun episode too, though. I mean, I love the callbacks. I love the, like, as you mentioned at the beginning, Cirroc, I love the emphasis on the relationships. I love they have a lot of biology in there. And, to be clear, actually, I should mention, like, I had nothing to do with that. Like, I was not involved in this episode at all. So, I mean, it's really exciting, and I really want to see where they're going to go. I don't know where they're going to go. It'll be really cool.
You know what I also kind of questioned about was when they were referring to data, they mentioned that was old technology before they got rid of wires, right?
Oh, did they say wires? I didn't remember that. Oh,
I thought I heard wires too. I thought they don't do wires or something, circuitry and wires. That's what I heard. Then I heard Stammen say, "Well, you married a hoarder, so I have all the wiring technology."
I do remember that.
Stuff.
Yeah,
that's right.
But so my question is, like, without wires and circuitry, like, what are they imagining into that future as the conduit for information and transferring information. I'd be interested to know
Yeah.
what is the technology. I mean, they talk about the spores, so I guess it's the spore
Mm-hmm.
technology for the engines, but I couldn't imagine how you can get around not having circuits, wires. I was like, what's O'Brien gonna do?
Yeah.
It's gotta go.
What's he gonna plug in?
Yeah.
I mean, with Voyager, they had those gel packs, right? Those neural gel packs or something like that. And I assume those were just like mostly like chemical signals that were going through there as opposed to electrics or a lot of, I mean, I guess nerves have both.
Ants or something.
Ants. Instead of the ant running, go faster.
Yeah. They're little chemical signals that they.
Oh, I see what you mean. I think literally an ant was running in there.
Little ant messengers bringing over the ones and zeros. Yeah.
We need more ant power. I'm going as fast as I can, Captain.
But that's true. Yeah, maybe something liquid or gel or gelatinous or something that way. Whatever the information is can transfer. Something that it has to transfer through something.
Yeah. Some signal energy has to flow in some way from one point to another to make it work. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this had a lot of stuff in it too. Our shout out to the self-sealing stem bolts too. Every time I hear self-sealing stem bolts, I'm sure it's a shout out to
of course
to the DS9 Les Landau days. So it's always fun to hear that too as well.
I wonder if they do that and think, I hope Cirroc Lofton sees this. They must.
Oh, yeah,
they
maybe.
must. I mean,
maybe I could see it. I could see that.
Of course, they're thinking
I felt
like
this time. This time I felt it. I really did. I was like, wait a minute, is this a shout out to the seventh rule almost, because that's our logo basically too. So it felt great.
I happen to know that episode. All of Paramount Plus and CBS Viacom, they're having a watch party right now of our review.
Yeah.
So hello to everybody there. Message received. Thank you for the shout out, everybody. Thank you so much. We appreciate all of you.
I have a question for you guys about the episode. Do you remember this was kind of a subtle thing that happened back in season 4. I don't know if you guys remember it. There was something that happened at one point in time where I think it was when they were about to go chase down species 10C, but Dr. Kovich said, there's a bigger issue and you deal with that right now. And everybody's like, what, really? But he just kind of left. I wonder.
Don't remember that. That's interesting.
I wonder if this is that. I wonder if they were already kind of thinking ahead of time back in season 4 that we're going to come to this like bigger issue, which is like the origin of life of everything we do. The one thing I would have done if I were writing it, when he said like you mean of life, they're like, oh, like humans and kelpians, and of course they listed all humanoids. Like, no, life is everything, like it's trees and grass and bacteria and everything. I would have done that in there too, but it's still, I mean, it's true. People tend to relate, of course, more to the humanoid. So I guess in a conversation, it makes more sense to do it that way. So fair enough, but I wonder if that was where that came from.
We're just about out of time here, and Dr. Noor, you have been so gracious with your time.
Honored
from work at Duke University, by the way, everybody. Look,
got my 7th rule poster
and Discovery poster. There. I'm seeing that too.
Oh yeah, Discovery too. Yeah, totally up to the top. There.
But any final thoughts on this episode, Dr. Noor? Before you go, did you have fun? Did you enjoy the heck out of it?
Very much so. I was so excited. There was a lot of action. There was a lot of heart. There was a lot of science. It's everything I would want from a Star Trek episode. So 2 thumbs up.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. We're going to take a very quick break. We want to give a very special thanks to Dr. Mohamed Noor, all the way from Duke University. Really, and boy, are his arms tired. We really appreciate him and his time. So thanks very much, Mohamed. We'll see you soon. And everybody, stick around. We've got way more coverage of this episode on the 7th rule.
Thanks for having me.
There it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the 7th rule with Cirroc, the final boss, Lofton.
Yeah, right. Hello.
All right, here are the trivioids of the week. Tonic 2161 is the official cocktail of the Millennium Celebration. President Rillick would like Saru to serve as a Federation ambassador. An 800-year-old science vessel was just found at the edge of the Beta Quadrant. Michael Burnham has a saxophone lesson to get to. That was an interesting visual. I didn't picture her as a saxophonist. Do tribbles roam freely on the Discovery? That was interesting. Tilly gets hot from some Andorian champagne. Maul and Locke delivered Fred some self-sealing stem bolts. Michael Burnham hasn't disliked someone so much in 930 years. And Tarina wants to codify her mutual agreement with Saru in a more official capacity. Codify. Although I think she said codify, which made me think, am I saying it wrong? Maybe that's a Canadian thing? I don't know. Anyway, so Cirroc, I had a couple things I wanted to bring up with you. Number one was, were you surprised to see Tilly back? Because I kind of was. I remember she left the show around the third or fourth episode of season 4, and I thought presumably it was to shoot and be a star in the new Starfleet Academy series. Just a guess, but she was leaving to be a Starfleet Academy professor, if you'll recall, with Admiral Vance, kind of nudging her to do so. So I didn't expect to see her, or at least I wasn't sure. I was thinking maybe she'll pop in and out here and there, and maybe she will. Maybe we'll just see her in this episode and then in 2 more episodes. I don't know. But what were you thinking when we saw her?
I was surprised to see her because, she wasn't, even in the opening, they kind of had her going off to Starfleet Academy. And so then seeing her back was kind of like, oh, well, she came back. Her hair was really big. I love her acting. I think she's just so natural. She's just a great actor, and I love her performance because she wears her emotions on her sleeve, and like, for example, and she played that drunk scene and she's kind of a little tipsy and she does that whole, back and forth with Burnham, like, hey, is it warm in here? And, that whole bit I thought was believable for me. The awkwardness that she played with that other Starfleet officer.
I don't think we got his name. Yeah.
Yeah, but there was an awkward moment between the two of them, and I felt like she played that pretty well. So, her acting is off the chain. She's dope. By the way, I called that other actor, I called him Fake Gyllenhaal.
Very good. Very nice.
That was my nickname for him. Tilly and Fake Gyllenhaal.
And it was Andorian champagne, I believe is what it was. That's why I was like, I got my Romulan ale. It's not Andorian, but I got the Romulan because they had a Romulan related storyline. Admiral, Velic or Dr. Velic. Or like that.
Yeah.
Or Valic.
Yeah.
So that was cool. I was like, wow, we got Andorians mentioned. We got Romulans. Oh, by the way, here's something very interesting. We had a new character introduced. A few, actually. I wanted to go over them. Captain Raynor, right? That was kind of the jerky captain guy, right? And that was Captain Raynor. Although I thought they said he was of the USS Mutari, and then later on, they were with the Antares. So I wasn't sure if this was 2 different ships or what the situation was there, but more on that in a moment. Captain Raynor is a Kelleran. A Kelleran. You notice the long kind of ears he had. A lot of the fans were wondering what's the situation with this new character. Because he's got these long ears. They're like, is he some kind of Vulcan? And what's his thing? So it's this guy, right? And he's actually from a race known as the Kelleran that were introduced in Deep Space Nine from the episode Armageddon Games. If you remember these guys, the Kellerans from Deep Space Nine, they had these same ears, you see.
Mm-hmm.
So that was pretty cool. And they had the funny hair, although he didn't have the funny hair like they did, unfortunately. But that was really cool to know that these are who they are. That looks like Deborah Messing. Is that Deborah Messing? Interesting.
Yeah, it does look like.
Yeah. So it would
I
have been
thought
nice
that
if you had
captain was
funny
a real
hair.
jerk.
Yeah. I like
Yeah.
those kind of guys.
Yeah, you do. Like a Captain Shaw type of guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, he reminded me of the James Bond. Is it Clive Owen that played James Bond at one point?
I have a confession to make. I'm the
Uh-oh.
wrong guy to ask about James Bond stuff. I think
Uh-oh.
I watched one James Bond movie a long time ago, and I think it was Pierce Brosnan. And I know right now there are some people that just screamed at their screen and said, "What?" And then they gave me some kind of lecture like, "Ryan, you got to watch some." And they're right, but I don't know. I know that there was Sean Connery, who is my favorite Bond. How can you have a favorite Bond if you've only watched one? He just is, because I love Sean Connery. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I have to look it up because I'm not exactly up on all of the James Bond. Oh, Daniel Craig, that's who he looks like to me.
Right.
He,
Yeah,
so it's
no, actually, yeah, I could definitely see that.
yeah, that actor had a Daniel Craig type look to him. Real good at playing the asshole role, but that's what he was there for. Was what I noticed that I hadn't seen before was that phaser rifle that Burnham was holding. It started off regular size, and she kind of had the
Mhm.
extendo motion on it. I like that.
They had a lot of really interesting and it fired really interestingly too. That was really
Yes.
cool. Yeah, they're making it a lot more action oriented. You could tell they made a conscious effort to say, let's make this fun. I would guess they're trying to appeal to a wider audience. They're thinking Star Trek fans will like it no matter what. We need to attract non-Star Trek fans to stumble upon it and go, "Whoa, I didn't know Star Trek was this cool. I'm going to watch more of it." Other fans like Star Wars fans or Marvel fans or Battlestar Galactica fans, things like that. So
Yeah.
I feel like they did a good job of really kind of trying to expand the fan base. And, I don't know why the nerd in me is like, if you're being transported down to a planet, I don't know why you're being transported on, and then you're being transported far away, and then you ride motorcycles in. Can't you just transport in? But obviously, we're glad they did that because then they had those motorcycles available for those cool scenes flying through, and then Michael
Yeah.
Burnham is surfing on a spaceship at warp speed. I mean, definitely they're showing
Yeah.
a lot of cool technology. They're showing a lot of cool action scenes, and they're really trying to,
Have we
let
seen
Star
that
Trek
before?
spread
Because
its wings.
that was making my nerd antenna kind of like go up a little bit. Like
Which thing?
the surfing the spaceship scene kind of it was a little much for me, and I don't know if we'd seen somebody ever do that before. I can understand being on the outside of a ship when it's stationary, but in the
Right.
middle of warp.
So here's what I was thinking on that. Is that I think it works because in space, there's no wind resistance, right? So the only thing you'd have to worry about is inertia. As long as she's got her gravity boots that are hanging on, right? So obviously, if the thing goes to warp, when she's on there, she's just going to get ripped apart, just because her feet are just going to get ripped, at least the way I understand it. But I feel like when ships go to warp, they create like a little warp bubble and they go. So my initial feeling was same as you, where I was like, "Whoa, what? No, no."
Yeah,
But then I thought about, it, I was like, you know what? First of all, it's not real. But then secondly, I was like, I think it works within the confines of the Star Trek universe that they've created. They've created these rules in the Star Trek universe, and I think it follows it. Yeah.
but had we seen that before? Had the
No.
original cast ever done that in a movie, in one of their movies, where Spock or Kirk are like on the outside of the ship while it's traveling at warp?
No, not to my knowledge. I mean, there's a really, really cool scene in Star Trek First Contact where they're walking on the hull of the ship, Picard and
Yeah,
Worf and Lieutenant Hawk and some Borg and all that. But the ship's not going at warp. It's like a drift. Um,
yeah,
in the J.J. Kelvin movies, they did a lot of zany stuff, a lot of action stuff, but I don't think we've ever seen them
yeah. That
on
that
the
was that
hull
was hard
at
for
warp.
me to believe. I'm sorry. I understand you just made a good explanation, possibly for it being able to be squeezed into the logical canon of things by the warp bubble explanation theory. Certainly is a valid theory.
You're like a noble effort.
It's a noble effort,
I think so,
and a
though.
valid theory. It's such
Yeah.
like a valid theory to say, hey, this is what I believe, and that I don't mind the theory. It's just for me watching it.
Yeah.
As I was watching it, I was having a reaction to watching it. And the reaction was, you can't do this. Like that's all I was saying. My reaction was this. No, whoa, 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 whoa. What is going on here? Now we're as a human being. So then I was thinking, like, then if that were the case, then what is the need for the ship? What is the need for a ship? Like you could just make a suit that has the same capabilities, and you could just go in a suit.
But then you're just hot boxing your lunch all day. Like if you had like something garlicky or whatever, like you don't want that. You want to be able to take your helmet off. You want to be able to chill and hang out, take a shower.
Yeah, I guess so. That's true. Yeah, you do want to go to the hollow suite every once in a while.
But for temporary missions, totally agree. Like, what if they're just like 2-hour mission and they don't have a ship, just get in a spacesuit, little propulsion, and they just go off, do their thing, fly back,
Yeah.
I don't see why not.
You're orbiting some planet. You can just say, hey, look, we need to run about. You can just take one of the suits. Yeah, that's possible.
Totally.
But then then why not have it all the time? Then when you go to the planet's surface, for example, instead of the motorcycle scene, now you got the suit scene, and my suit just goes warp, and I'll just catch up to any ship or wherever. It becomes a little bit too much for me. So I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I was thinking about G forces and all of those things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, isn't there a G force issue right there? But and then the other thing that since I'm on my tirade for a second, I'm gonna say the other thing that gives me a little bit of pause, and that is the Dr. Kovich black, because he was like he's part of the Section 31. Is that what he is?
I don't recall exactly what his affiliation is. He's like a scientist, basically.
But he's part of some kind of black ops inside of the Federation that has access to more knowledge than even the Admiral would have or anybody else. So he's kind of a high level black ops Section 31-ish type character. That's how I perceive him.
He's a Federation official. But yeah, we don't know too much. It says his professional expertise included a background in cognitive science with a specialty in artificial sentience and intelligence. So he's some kind of scientist. We don't know exactly how he's affiliated, it seems. Yeah.
But clearly he has knowledge that Burnham doesn't have, or access to some information that's classified that that even Admiral Vance is not privy to, right? That he doesn't even know. So, which gives him a purview type of character where he is above the other characters with more knowledge than them, and he can slowly disseminate whatever knowledge he wants to as the story goes. The only issue I have with that is his presence on the ship itself. I don't mind the character. I don't mind the way the character is being performed by the actor. My issue is his presence directly on the ship, because it undermines a captain's authority to have somebody who's above them.
Oh yeah.
Also present in the on the bridge, and I just don't think it allows you to have the traditional Star Trek story that you have, where the captain may break some rules here and there and makes decisions and flies off the handle whenever they decide that it's necessary, or the authority that a captain has on Star Trek is undermined when he'll have to look over and say, can we do this, to somebody else, and now you're giving the power to that character, and I don't like that character's presence on the bridge. Certainly they could be on a computer screen giving out orders, or a hologram version of them that pops up and says, hey, this is what you have to do, but constantly there overlooking Saru's shoulders, overlooking Michael Burnham's shoulders, having to be reported to back all the time, undermines the captain.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure Michael Burnham and Saru feel the same way about that. There's like, they seem to be okay with him, but they would most likely rather him not be on their ship while they're going.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe
Saru was like, would you like to wait in the ready room? Like,
right. That's true.
Do you mind getting out of here?
He was like, no, I'm quite comfortable here. And Saru's like,
yeah,
okay,
getting thrown around.
okay, whatever, Dick. I do want to point out something, speaking of the bridge, that I really liked. It was towards the beginning, and it's along the lines of the last season on Star Trek Discovery. What it did was it gave one little roundabout, great directing and camera work, cinematography. For that bridge scene where all of the bridge crew gets reintroduced with like one line, right? Because then we get reacquainted. It's a nice way for us to reacquaint ourselves with, oh yeah, there's this person, there's that person. They all that got this little moment to shine. It started with Lieutenant Christopher, who I believe was the guy that replaced Bryce. Then Linus, who's getting a little bit more. I like to see Linus. He's not just in a turbo lift, but he's got his station. He said something. Yeah. Then I believe it went to Owo, right? Owoshikun is how they pronounce it. Owoshikun. And then it went over to Reese in the back. Detmer was walking in, and then she says something. So it's just a really nice way to reintroduce and reacquaint ourselves with all of them. But then on top of that, a little later, we were introduced to two more lieutenants. Saru called one of them Lieutenant Gallo. She had like cropped hair. She had a couple lines. Lieutenant Gallo, I think she was replacing Owo. And then there was Lieutenant Nia as well. So that was two more characters that were prominently featured. Each had a couple lines. So we'll be watching to see if that continues. I can't imagine that's just for one episode. Maybe it is, but they keep bringing in new characters for us to kind of play around with and noodle around, be like, oh, who's this? What's that? I liked all that cool stuff.
Yeah, I'll tell you what I did like, even though I just spent some time harping on the believability of flying on the outside of the ship.
That's what Star Trek fans do.
Yeah. But what I did like, and this is the director's choice and just the way it looked cinematically, I thought it was good. Actually, it was excellent. When Burnham is at the point where she lets go of the ship and she's flying and hurtling into space towards Discovery, and she's telling him, hey, beam me back in. Saru's like, yeah, we're working on it. That scene where she's floating in space, headed right towards the hull of Discovery, and then gets beamed back into Discovery right on the bridge as she walks into the captain's chair. I thought that was a very good shot. It looked excellent to me.
Smooth. Yeah.
It was smooth. It went from the transition from being outside in space to now being right on the bridge. And just was seamless as far as the way it flowed for me. So I thought that was a great job by the director and whoever pulled that off with the special effects and animation behind that.
Great point. And speaking of seamless, we have countless times complimented wardrobe. See, that was pretty good, I thought. All of the creatives are unbelievable on this show. Specifically, I want to talk about that desert planet. I don't remember what it's called. It started with a V, maybe. And the interiors, especially, the exterior was cool. Desert planet. Okay, cool. We like it. It looks beautiful. We love it. Fine. The interiors on that planet, with like the golds and the ambers and kind of like maroon, hazy maroon colors in there, looked amazing. I mean, we're used to it because that's what Discovery's been doing for 5 seasons. But man, is the production design and art decoration just unreal. It was so pretty to look at and so detailed. We've come a long way from the courtyard planet where kids are playing hacky sack in the corner and somebody's carrying a basket of fruit, and there's a little water fountain in the back. Like, man, that was
Yeah.
gorgeous.
So did you notice the names that we got?
We got Alton Soong.
Yep.
That was the one I got. Was there another one?
I got another name.
Let's hear it.
It was for Grudge.
Oh, yes, you're right. Wow, very good. We can't say Picard got one because we saw his picture.
Yes. They could have used a better headshot for me. They looked like they clipped that from the episode itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I did get that. Also, I would have liked a little because we got two new characters, Maul and Locke. Locke. What was Locke? Was that a Orion, or I couldn't figure out what kind of.
I'm pretty sure that's a new alien that we've never seen before.
Okay, so that wasn't something because was it a green? Because it looked green to me, like the color of his skin a little bit. It was greenish. Okay, yeah. So I put Orion guy because I didn't know if he was like an Orion Syndicate kind of.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we don't know what that alien is. I certainly don't know. It's the first time we've ever seen this alien. That much I do know. So if anybody knows what kind of alien it is, it's because Star Trek has released information on it or something. But other than that, we don't know. And we don't even know if Maul is a human. Maybe she is. Maybe she's something else.
Yeah, I liked her though. She was good.
I liked her very much too. The guy that plays Locke is Elias Tufexis, I believe. I'm looking for him. Elias Tufexis, and I can't remember off the top of my head what the lady's name is that plays Maul. I'm gonna check.
Yeah, the two of them were good together. I thought they had good chemistry. And
Eve Harlow. Eve Harlow, and she plays Maul, and Elias Tufexis plays Locke.
Yeah. And I caught a Morn knockoff in the background. Did you see that they had like a Morn?
No. Allurian?
Yeah, there was is that what they are? Allurian?
Yeah. Allurian.
Yeah, they had an Allurian at the in the background of the bar situation at the cocktail party when everybody was drinking.
If it's a bar, then yeah, it's definitely Lurian. Yeah, it might have been Morn himself. We don't know how old he is. We don't know how long they live.
Yeah, it could have been Morn himself, but I definitely in the background. And like you said, if it's a bar situation, then you're going to find one there. So
yeah, I love it. That's cool. Well, we're already just about out of time on this episode here, but obviously there's a lot more to talk about in future episodes. Like, for example, we don't know what, when Mohamed was here, we don't know what in the wrong hands that technology could do, but there's 9 more episodes to find out. We don't know anything about Locke and Maul, but there's 9 more episodes. I'm sure we're going to see them a ton. They're going to be like the baddies of the season.
If we're talking about the power to create life, then reverse engineer it could be the power to destroy it. So totally. I'm sure that's what is at stake at this point. But yeah, I also did like the kind of note that they ended on because we got a little smile out of Burnham towards the end. Like, okay, I'm ready. She did a little blackmail job on Dr. Kovich towards the end, like, hey, if you want to know the answer, you're going to have to include me. So I like that kind of enthusiasm and take charge attitude for Burnham.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Yeah, it's all good stuff all the way around. I know what they mean now when they say this is going to be action and adventure season. So they were saying it's going to be a lot like Indiana Jones. And I'm like, I could see it. Okay. I could feel it, right? You can get that sense that it's going to be action, adventure, Indiana Jones. They're looking for a treasure. They're on a on a bounty hunter kind of mission, you know. So that's what this season's going to be about. It's not going to be like just this one episode. It's going to be this season's probably going to have this kind of feel. So looking forward to that. 9 more episodes of this. It's going to be nuts. But, let's give a special thanks to people that are not nuts and never will be or have been. And their names are, here they are. Homer Frizzell, Dr. Marie Segal, Eve England out in Wales, Yvette Blackmon-Tom, TJ, Jackson-Bey out in Missouri, Titus Mohler, Dr. Mohamed Noor, Tierney C. Dieckmann, Anil O. Polat, Joe Balsarotti, Mike Gu, Dr. Stephanie Baker, Carrie Schwent, Faith Howell, Edward Foltz, My Live from Tokyo, The Matt Boardman, Chris McGee, Justin Weir, Jake Barrett, Henry Unger, Allyson Leach-Heid, Julie Manasfi, Marcia Classic Schreier, Greg K. Wickstrom, Jed Thompson, Susan V. Gruner, Glenn Iverson, Dave Gregory, Tim Baum, and of course, the guy that invented motorcycles on a desert planet, Jason Okun. All right, everybody. I think that's it for us. Thank you very much for the fun, and we will see you next time. Please remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel. If you're listening in, give us a 5-star rating and a nice review. We'd really appreciate that on the 7th rule.